Hello everyone, welcome to the first New Wave Learning vlog. Thank you for joining us today. It's a very exciting day, our first one, and luckily for us we have with us Tom Kambouris from MyBalanceFormula. My name is Ciara Lees from New Wave, but first things first, let's hear a little bit more about Tom. Tom, will you introduce yourself quickly and a little bit about your organisation?
Thanks, Ciara. Thanks for having me. So yes, I'm Tom Kambouris. I am the founder of an organization called MyBalanceFormula. We are very interested in all things life balance, in how we can help organizations or individuals with their well-being, their happiness, their health, and attaching that to if we get that right, then that will help in other aspects of our lives, including performance at work and other aspects of just happiness and being an engaged, fulfilled person throughout your journey, so to speak.
Yeah, brilliant. And it's so good that we've got Tom with us today, because our topic of discussion is all around stress management, your well-being, and how to stay resilient in this current world as we start to kind of transition back to some sort of normality, whether that's going back to the office or whatever that might be for you. So we're going to ask Tom 3 questions. Try and keep it as short and sweet as possible, but you know, sometimes the flow gets going and we don't want to stop that. So let's kickstart with the first question. So Tom, good. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing people's mental health as we all start to return to work?
So I think, so if we talk about people's mental health as we start returning to work, let's take a step back and think about this whole process of COVID has sort of landed on us. And I think this is kind of like it's similar to a change project in an organization, right? It's a change for all of us. So this is sort of like a change project for the planet, right? For everyone that's involved. And if you think about this notion of change, there's a wave of emotions typically, and we will land on different parts of this wave. Some people call it the loss curve or the change curve, where when something happens, you go through this sort of spectrum of emotions. It could be shock to start with, or anger, or blame, or self-blame, certainly anxiety, depression. And so this curve is kind of doing this as you go down, and then it gets to this place of uncertainty, where you don't know kind of how this is going to play out. And then you start coming out the other end and start wanting to reintegrate through problem solving, integration, and then, you know, kind of reaping the benefits of the new reality. I feel like we're all in some area of this curve right now.
Yeah.
And so the invitation, I think, is to first understand that, right? To not be too hard on yourself with regard to, I'm feeling really anxious or really angry or really uncertain right now. This is part of how humans deal with big change. And it's an evolution and it's a process. We do have to monitor it because we can get stuck in certain aspects of it. But I guess first just accepting that this is impacting us in a way that we get impacted. Different aspects of our lives go through this. This is a huge one that we're actually sharing with the entire civilized world. But I guess that's the first thing, is just to acknowledge, wow, we're going through something fairly significant right now. And then after that, start looking at coping mechanisms and how we can progress ourselves through the loss curve.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge challenge for a lot of people, is just to accept that they are struggling, or they are feeling a bit down, or they do have anxiety. It's a massive thing for people to accept their own mental health sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's also, so it's just also being aware of it. So sometimes we just kind of grind through and we don't understand that we are suffering to some degree. You know, especially like I've been working a lot more than I thought I would be at home. I thought it'd be a lot more, it'd just be easier to stay balanced. It's turned out that it's not. It's more difficult to turn off at home in a strange way. So finding out these new challenges, but also being kind to yourself and understanding that all of this is new. We're learning as we go, and we are going through a process of emotional and physical change right now due to this huge impact of, you know, this life-altering factor that's come into all of our lives. So acknowledge it, embrace it, be kind to yourself, and understand that you are going to go through a process to get out the other end.
Yeah, it's okay. It's fine. You will come out the other end of it. And it's knowing, I think we were talking about this before, weren't we? Knowing that everyone else is in this similar boat. Of course, it's affecting us all in different ways. But, you know, as you say, we're sharing this massive change with the whole world. So it's just, being kind to each other as well as yourself. Yeah.
Such a good point. Such a good point. Yeah. And like, reaching out, this element of reaching out and understanding that others are going through a similar process than you. They might be in a different stage, but this element of us being kind to each other, what a concept. Even more so now than ever.
Absolutely. So, okay, let's move on to question 2 then. So what do you think that organizations can be doing to support their staff during this transition back to work?
Yeah, so I think, building on the first question, organizations need to first to acknowledge what we've just talked about, that is happening. Some organizations may take the approach of, let's just put the blinders on and just go, business as usual and see what happens.
Yeah.
And I would contend that that's probably going to get you into a place where your employees are suffering even more. So just that acknowledgement from organizations, but also really, really open, especially open lines of communication, and not just communication, but safe communication. So for me, if I were to raise my hand in a business and say, you know what, I'm suffering right now. I'm scared about the future. I'm uncertain about my job right now because this is not how I usually do things. Usually I would have trouble doing that because whoever I'm speaking to, well, I guess they could potentially use that against me, right? Well, Tom's not up for it, so we got to be careful with Tom. We may need to move him along, or maybe need to restructure what he does. So there's an element of the businesses allowing us to feel safe, to express whatever we're expressing, and to be okay with us expressing that. And then once we have, then to support us in different ways, right? There's different challenges for different people, right? And each of those challenges has a plan, a solution to come out the other end, to feel better, to be more productive. But first we need to just figure out what those are and have people be able to be authentic enough, honest enough, self-disclosing enough, vulnerable enough to say, hey, this is what's going on with me right now. And then have a business that says, I hear you, and this is what we're going to do for you. That is what I think businesses could best do right now for people.
Yeah, so providing people with that kind of psychological safety to feel comfortable to say how they're feeling and what they need.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you're right. There's a huge kind of population in the workplace at the moment that is very much, they don't want to admit their weakness because people are fearful of their jobs at the moment. So admitting any sort of weakness or any sort of incompetence could worry people that, that they'll be the next people that organization doesn't need. And that's horrible to think about, but there's no doubt that people are thinking about that at the minute, is being safe in their role and how they can stay there.
Yeah, and it's I think it's something that persists during normal times, but even more so now. Like we are more vulnerable now than ever, and so we really need a comforting hand from businesses to say, guys, we understand, and we're here to work with you, and we're going to put some things in place, and really communicating in a way that expresses that and repeats it over and over again, because a business can say it once during an all hands meeting and then go back to their their ivory towers and that gets lost. So you have to kind of beat that drum over and over again. Guys, this is all, we're all going through this. It's a safe place. Let's all talk about it over and over again. And I think these messages will come out in a way that businesses can then help their employees.
Yeah, it's making it a priority, isn't it? Just making your people a priority during this crisis, which I imagine a lot of businesses are finding hard to do, because they're being kind of hit by all sorts of threats and things across the world, and what's impacting everyone. So it's impacting businesses on a big level. So I imagine probably sometimes not through any fault of their own, but our senior leaders are overlooking our people because they're trying to keep the business above water.
Yeah, if we go back to thinking about this as a huge, massive humankind change project.
Yeah.
If we then come back to like organizational change projects, the main culprit of change not sort of succeeding is lack of communication, right? So an organization is changing from one building to another. They have a big launch about it and everything, and they talk about how exciting it's going to be, and then they go back to their stuff, and then people start thinking, yeah, but where am I going to sit? And how, like, am I going to be with my team? When is it going to happen? Is there going to be enough room for me? All those questions are continuing to populate, but that initial conversation is the only thing the organization will offer. So now if we take a step back to here and now, well, even more so, let's, as organizations, understand that we're in a big change and use best practice to provide solutions as we would in a normal change project. This is just a massive, huge, global change initiative.
Yes, it's a really good point. That's how organizations should look at it. Absolutely. Okay, well, let's move on to the final question then. So, Tom, what are your top tips for helping people manage stress and boost their performance?
Okay. So this one is, for me, I think there has to be a step back for people to really find a mechanism to understand where they are right now. And it's difficult to do that. For me personally, it needed sort of this seismic event for me to be able to say, you know what, Tom, the stuff you've been doing over the past year and years and like 10 years that you thought was to provide more for your family and to be able to support your friends and everyone else because you're grinding and you're succeeding and you're making more money and all this stuff. In fact, a lot of that was tied into your own needs, you know, like ego and wanting to succeed for your own benefit. And really what your family wanted was just for you to be more available, like to just be with them more than you are right now. I needed this seismic event. For me, it was a 10-day meditation retreat that I had to get so quiet that I started reviewing all this stuff that was going on over the years and immediately started seeing how wrong I had gotten it when what I could have sworn I was right. We need to somehow have a similar type of mechanism to review how right are we right now with where we think we are and how we think we're doing. So there's different ways. There's ways of getting feedback from people that will give you honest feedback to yourself, right? People will say, hey, you know, Tom, you're doing pretty well, but your time is leaking during your daily work output. It seems like you're now working till 6, till 7, till 8. Things are slipping as far as your engagement with your family or your friends or whatever. We need someone to be able to give us really, really honest feedback. That's one way. Another is to be able to give ourselves really honest feedback, but we typically can't do that so easily. So we need to be able to step outside of ourselves and look at this entity and how it's operating. One way to do that is through mindfulness. Mindfulness has a way, a sustained mindfulness practice has a way of allowing us to detach a little bit and have a meta perspective of what's happening in our lives. You know, there's mindfulness is kind of like self-therapy. There's actual therapy where you need to get messaging to you that's new and that you can hear deeply to tell you how you're doing. Once you do that, then there's a bunch of different mechanisms that we can use to get us exactly on the path we want to be on. But first, let's find out if we're on the right path. And if we are, great. If we're not, how much would it suck if we just kept on this path for the next month and year and 10 years and 20 years? I've seen it. I saw it with my dad. Like he lived his entire life without any kind of perspective of what really makes you happy or what other people would love to have from you as a member of a family or as a member of the community or as just a member of the human race. And so, first thing is to figure out a way to see just how happy you really are right now.
Yeah. And that's awesome. That's a really good response. It's just, I think you're right. It's just about taking that moment. It's such a simple thing that can have such a huge impact on the rest of your life and the people around you. So you talk about kind of practicing mindfulness, and a lot of people might turn their nose up at mindfulness thinking, you know, there's all this hippie stuff. But mindfulness can just be 5 minutes where you sit on the couch when you get home, close your eyes and just think and listen and just try and turn your brain off, just breathe and listen to some nice music or listen to a podcast, something to take you out of your day and out of those thoughts that are whirring around your mind, because they won't leave. And then if they're still in there, then you don't have that time to really figure out where you are in that kind of curve. I mean, we talk about in our latest program, Energize Me, which is all around managing stress and boosting performance. We talk a lot about the human performance curve and getting people to identify where they are on that. And just taking 5 minutes each day to kind of think about, where am I? Am I slipping into survival? How am I feeling today? Do I have a little bit of anxiety? It will help people to realize, right, okay, tomorrow I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take my kid to school or spend some time doing this, just to make that detachment, because it will hopefully bring you back into those other zones on the human performance curve where you perform better, you know, which is overall better for your business as well. So it makes sense for organizations to invest in that education as well.
Agreed.
Fab. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today, Tom. I hope you enjoyed it. I did. I've learned a lot.
Good, I did too.
Brilliant. And I will share with everyone more information about My Balance Formula and your kind of social media handles and things like that, if people want to give Tom a follow. But thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Ciara. My pleasure.
Bye.